Tomorrow we will be teaching the classic of filial piety. For those of you who want to understand traditional culture, let us study it together. I am not an expert in this field, but this time I will use each principle found within the classic of filial piety to see if we can explore them from a Buddhist perspective. Each session will probably last about half an hour. I hope to cover one chapter every day. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, or perhaps half an hour. At most, it will not exceed 45 minutes and 5 seconds. Just kidding. I really do not know how long it will take. It likely will not be very long. But every day I would like to use some Buddhist teachings, such as the teaching on honoring and respecting our parents. Within the Buddhist sutras, there are texts specifically about the kindness of parents, such as the Sutra on repaying kindness and the Sutra on the difficulty of repaying the kindness of parents. I will combine these principles and weave them into the teaching. In the past, I thought that the Han region already had many analyses and explanations of the classic of filial piety, but this time I want to approach it from our Buddhist perspective. Traditionally, we speak of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism as the pillars of traditional culture. I want to explore if there is common ground between Confucianism and Buddhism. When we taught the guidelines for being a good person previously, we used the same method. Later, for those studying traditional culture and those in the Buddhist community, this might at least serve as a small bridge for understanding, and even if it does not, I think it is worthwhile to study it myself. That is our plan for tomorrow. Now, where shall we begin reading for today?
Pakirtangam Santo Shermando, Tomba Tuji Chanla Kisham Zaro, Kumshosam di Rigin Machu Prepshepato, Detang, Shirgurva Chumba, Parur Gurva Tamchi, Zirki Nomba, Jambatang, Lojutang, Stobatang, Tanganzandang, Zondang, Popa Pusum Soba, Dribatang, Gunir Danga Tamchetang, Jara, Dripamipi, Number Tarvala, Nepa, Popa Yin Chapi, Jimbadang, Daradang, Gervatang, Yang Tagbur. Dombadang, Tsatamdang, Zopadang, Zonjidang, Santandang, Sherapdang, Tavlam Kepadang, Molumdang, Topdang, Ishiji Parordam Shimba, Lengi Param Jongwa, Mabung Badang, Merkiva Chulab, Zopadang, Damba, Shirma Doba, Chuji, Korlo Kuram, Sanyan Mepi, Shirjib Tapa, Semchan Tamchiti, Wombo Shipalam Kepa, Kur Tamchi Zirki Magnumba, Manjik Per Nambra Nomba, Sonumdang Ishi, Tsogor, Gyachimbi, Soba. Dechimbo Soban, Tsanda, Huishi Zombo Tamchiti, Lishan de Gyamba, Zigdamban Zamba, Jan Tang Jara, Riripki Zemo, Tova, Jenda, Nyamba, Jagbe, Ngumbram Pagba, Lagbu Samba, Dorji Tava, Jave, Sanje, Chudan, Gindan La, Mershipi Tapar, Niet Ba.
Everyone here has already aroused bodhicitta, right? There is no need to say it out loud. Please generate the Supreme Bodhicitta before we start today's teaching. Now let us continue with the Vimalakirti Sutra. In our previous session on the Vimalakirti Sutra, we already covered the beginning. We discussed the location where this sutra was taught, who the members of the assembly were, and the primary time it was taught. That was roughly what we covered. We also learned that there were 8,000 bhikshus present. As the Tibetan text mentions, these 8,000 bhikshus were all arhats. They were able to extinguish all afflictions, remove all defilements, and attain liberation. The text described the Hinayana levels of realization and their unique qualities. Of course, the bhikshus mentioned here were mostly arhat bhikshus. Among the different types of bhikshus, some are bhikshus in name only, some are those who have destroyed afflictions, and some are ordinary individuals who are bhikshus in the conventional sense. Among these various types, the majority are those who have destroyed afflictions, meaning those who have completely severed all afflictions. This was all covered in the previous part of the teaching. Starting today, we will discuss the Bodhisattvas. In this assembly, there were 32,000 Bodhisattvas. First, let me introduce the merits and qualities of these 32,000 Bodhisattvas. Then we will speak about the most representative figures among them. The names of all the Bodhisattvas are not mentioned. Only a portion of them is introduced. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are actually many different styles of teaching the Dharma. There are quite a few of them indeed. I wonder if any of you here recall that I mentioned this when teaching the way of the Bodhisattva. Many teaching styles derive from the tradition of Nalanda Monastery, as well as the tradition of Vikramashila Monastery. When we summarize these, the three methods commonly used by many Dharma masters in Tibetan Buddhism are as follows. The first is the summary of the outline. The summary of the outline is like a fierce tiger leaping across a gorge. Just like a tiger when it leaps, there might not be a specific sequence or fixed pattern, yet it lands precisely exactly where it intended to go. For instance, it might spring from one hill to another or from one tree to another. In this way, the distance across the gorge is covered in just a brief moment. This method of covering ground is like the outline, where many sections with different contents are summarized all at once. This, too, is done in the style of a fierce tiger leaping across a gorge. The teachings of some great masters also follow this tiger leaping style. For example, with our Vimalakirti Sutra, recently there have been masters from both Han and Tibetan Buddhism who finished teaching it in just 2, 3, or 5 sessions. In truth, if one were to teach it in its entirety, it could never be finished. Yet in this tiger leaping style, they leap through everything in just an hour or two. So this method also follows certain principles of teaching the Dharma. Sometimes our thinking can be very active. Some people have said to me, while you are teaching one thing, you suddenly jump to another topic. You leap very quickly. I say that this is the tiger leaping style. A tiger generally does not follow rules. If it is here, it can instantly turn around and leap elsewhere, especially for our translators and those creating transcripts. This phenomenon likely does occur at times. Of course, I am not saying this to praise myself. I truly do not follow rules very strictly in this regard. In truth, if one is to teach the Dharma, it should be done in an organized way, with a clear sense of sequence from beginning to end. Teaching in a sequential manner is the best approach, but sometimes one might become a little excited, or another matter might suddenly arise. In such moments, the mind cannot continue the previous line of reasoning in time, and the teaching becomes rather leap-like in its jumping. Actually, regarding this point, I personally do not consider it a fault. I have seen or heard Western scholars give speeches in this same way. Some films and television shows are like this as well. In some very famous television programs, one might not know why a different shot suddenly appears. People who frequently watch movies will understand it. When a certain character's face suddenly appears, they can understand the reason behind it. So this is what I was just mentioning. The first method is the summary of the outline. There is also a second method, the detailed explanation of the verses. This means explaining the meaning of the verses in detail, like a tortoise crawling. That is to say, when we explain certain verses, we explain them word by word and phrase by phrase in great detail. This is equivalent to the crawling of a tortoise. As a tortoise crawls, it moves along bit by bit. It will not simply leap across. So when we explain the text of a verse or a particular term, we should be very meticulous. But at such times, some people might not appreciate it. They feel that being so wordy is not very good. We already understand the literal explanation. It would be better to teach in a summarized way. There is no need to teach word by word like this. But in fact, it is necessary. Every sentient being has different capacities. For some people, explaining every single word bit by bit is necessary. Many Indian treatises also provide very extensive explanations. Take, for example, the root stanzas of the Middle Way. Within the root stanzas of the Middle Way, at the end of the 25th chapter, there is a verse that says, the cessation of all conceptual proliferation. In the Prasanapada, Master Chandrakirti mentions the cessation of all conceptual proliferation repeatedly 3 or 4 times. What is the cessation of all conceptual proliferation? It means the cessation of all conceptual thoughts. And what is conceptual proliferation? Existence, non-existence, right, wrong, and so on. He explains it in this way. It seems as if we who have studied Madhyamaka might wonder why it is explained this way. Previously, Garab Dorje composed an explanation of soul air of the doctrine Tantra. The explanation of the soul air of the doctrine Tantra is the same. It goes word by word, character by character. For example, conceptual proliferation. What is conceptual proliferation? It is conceptual thought. And tranquil cessation. What is meant by tranquil? Tranquil means the complete exhaustion of all clinging. Then what is cessation? It means to extinguish from the very root. Sometimes it seems the explanation and what is being explained are basically the same. This is the second method of explanation. The third method is the synthesis of the general meaning. That is to bring together the key points like the snow lion of the Himalayas. The snow lion here can also be described as the lion gazing with pride. For example, when the lion is on the snowy mountains, it is very majestic and dignified. It intimidates all the surrounding animals. Similarly, at the end, we use the method of synthesis. We say there is the brief explanation, the extensive explanation, and the synthesis. Many outlines also include this. At the end, during the synthesis, the key points are summarized. Some people have said to me, you should provide a summary every day. What did we teach today? Point 1, point 2, point 3. But sometimes, because our course is not just 1 or 2 lectures, if it were just 1 or 2 lectures, it would be fine to provide a synthesis for everyone every day. But for a long-term course held every day, I feel that a daily synthesis is not necessary. In truth, there is also this summarizing method where all the above content is expressed in a simple and concise way. This is also a method, therefore, our great predecessors, whether they were composing treatises or teaching the Dharma, would all display these phenomena. Thus, for the listeners, those who understand the principles well will think, oh, we are currently in the tortoise-crawling mode. They will not develop wrong views, going word by word. Some Khenpos we encountered before would spend every day on just one word. They would wait on a single word for a long time. We would feel particularly anxious. When we had tutoring sessions in the past, they were mostly outdoors, when it was snowing heavily outside or sometimes hailing, as I have mentioned before. There was an old Khenpo who, during tutoring, would not consider at all that we were shivering outside. He would check the dictionary and flip through materials himself. How should this word be explained? Such is the tortoise crawling. We understood that this was the way things were, and when the leaps were quite dramatic, we would think, wow, the tiger has leaped again. So for the rest of our session today, will it be the tiger, the tortoise, or the lion? Let us see. It will not depart from these 3. If you find it a little hard to follow, just think to yourself, this is probably the tiger style. That perspective might help. Just kidding. Now, let me share the qualities of these Bodhisattvas with everyone. These Bodhisattvas, as everyone knows. Today we come to the phrase describing the 32,000 Bodhisattvas, known to all. Known to all. This means that the Bodhisattvas we are about to discuss are great spiritual teachers known to all beings everywhere. In our world, they shine like the sun and the moon, acting as the eyes of the entire world. Through their wisdom, their altruistic mind, and their virtuous conduct, their merits in every aspect are like the sun and the moon. These are spiritual teachers known to everyone without exception. Of course, this sutra mentions bodhisattvas such as Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, and the others below. In truth, bodhisattvas like these were very numerous even in the past. During the Buddha's lifetime and throughout the more than 2,500 years since the Buddha's parinirvana, many bodhisattvas have appeared in the world. It is the same today, and there will be more in the future. Now, as for these bodhisattvas, they are adorned with the qualities we are about to describe. Nowadays, some famous people are known because they are very wealthy, such as the world's richest person, who is incredibly skilled at trading stocks, someone with a particular talent or expertise in that area, or someone who is exceptionally beautiful in appearance, since people nowadays place a high value on looks, or someone who works in the arts like a celebrity who is well known to everyone. Perhaps people in both East and West know who this celebrity is, but if someone's mind stream were genuinely endowed with the qualities we are about to discuss, perhaps many people today would not necessarily recognize it. So in every era, the cultural values that people admire are indeed quite different. Now, the bodhisattvas, who were universally known at that time, were endowed with the virtuous qualities described below. What kind of virtuous qualities? Having perfected great wisdom and foundational conduct. In truth, the bodhisattvas we will discuss are all endowed with these qualities. Of course, all of you here have also aroused bodhicitta of the Mahayana path. So for each of these qualities, we should both recognize that these bodhisattvas possess such qualities and at the same time reflect on ourselves. Do we ourselves possess these qualities? We may not yet have all of the qualities they possess, but we can certainly cultivate some of them, because we too have aroused bodhicitta, and we too have taken the vow to be disciples of the three jewels. So we too can reflect on this. We can also examine these teachings in the context of our own mind stream. We can analyze them for ourselves. Here, having perfected great wisdom and foundational conduct, these bodhisattvas are endowed with great wisdom and noble conduct. All of these are fully accomplished. What is great wisdom? It is the wisdom of realizing emptiness. Every bodhisattva will be endowed with this. As for foundational conduct, it means being endowed with the 6 paramitas and the vast practices. In other words, noble and altruistic conduct. All of these are fully perfected. What we speak of as wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is the understanding that penetrates the true nature of all phenomena, and compassion encompasses the 6 paramitas and vast Mahayana practices that benefit all sentient beings. This is the conduct of the bodhisattva. If a person is endowed with these 2 qualities, we can truly say that they have accomplished very great merit. Having both wisdom and altruistic conduct, the view of Mahayana Buddhism can be said to be the wisdom of no self. And what is Mahayana Buddhist conduct? It is altruistic conduct. View, meditation, and conduct. Practice can also proceed in this way, and the final fruition is also the result of wisdom and compassion united. Therefore, we can say, having perfected great wisdom and foundational conduct, established through the majestic power of all the Buddhas. This means that these bodhisattvas are endowed with the majestic power of all the Buddhas through which they are established. Or, as both Xuanzang's translation and the Tibetan version state, what is it that they all possess? The majestic empowering grace of all the Buddhas. It may be that during Xuanzang's era, the expression blessings was used, whereas in the time of Kumarajiva, as we also noted when teaching the Lotus Sutra last year, what we now call blessings was often expressed as majestic power or substituted with other terms. So what this passage means is that these bodhisattvas are in fact endowed with the body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas, along with their supremely exalted empowering grace. You see, for these bodhisattvas, the empowering grace of the Buddha is inseparable from them. As Buddhist practitioners, we too should be endowed with the empowering grace of all the Buddhas and bodhisattvas. This point is very important. Once one is separated from this empowering grace, I think even for a bodhisattva, the ability to benefit sentient beings would be diminished. Through this reasoning, we can also infer the nature of the relationship between a guru and disciple. In truth, every Buddhist practitioner and every disciple must be endowed with the empowering grace of the lineage gurus, the empowering grace of the root guru, and the empowering grace of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of one's own tradition. If a Buddhist practitioner has already been separated from this empowering grace, it may appear on the surface that they have great wisdom, eloquence, and capability. Yet in reality, in our actual everyday lives, the majestic power to benefit sentient beings might be considerably lacking. Therefore, as Buddhist practitioners, some may be capable of establishing centers and turning the wheel of Dharma, but they never pray to their guru, nor do they seek the empowering grace of the three jewels. I am genuinely concerned about such people. In the long run, they may not sustain the lasting power to propagate the Dharma and benefit beings. If a person has sincere and fervent devotion, regularly praying to, serving, and visualizing their lineage gurus, and toward the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, including reciting prayers to Dharma protectors, they gather these many forms of empowering grace continuously into their own mind stream. Then, by relying on this invisible, empowering grace, even if one is a person of limited ability, by relying on the external support of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, just as when we recite the name of Amitabha Buddha of the Western Pure Land, through the union of the Buddha's aspiration and one's own devotion, when these two come together, rebirth in the Pure Land becomes possible. In the same way, in our everyday lives, if one possesses the empowering grace of the Guru, the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the three jewels, along with one's own devotion, and the karmic connections from past lives are also in place, then whether it is propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings or establishing a center, nothing will present any real difficulty. So I feel that this kind of auspicious interdependence is very important. You see, even the Bodhisattvas who have attained the Bhumi still need to be established by the majestic power of all the Buddhas. So I hope that we, as Buddhist practitioners, will always remember to pray to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Some of us only recite a few words of prayer when we are happy, while the rest of the time we are busy chasing after money. Many things seem to be absent. Some people, though they are engaged in the study and contemplation of the Dharma, never pray at all. They simply do not have this connection. They are like a teacher in a school, a teacher of Buddhist studies with a purely academic approach. When studying, they simply pick up a book, go to class to lecture to students, or sit there in meditation themselves. But within the heart, the genuine resonance between the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and oneself, or what we might call the connection, the line of empowering grace linking them together, or the thread of one's own devotion is rather lacking. In my own experience, even if you are a purely academic scholar, if you hold reverent and sincere devotion toward Buddhism, the conclusions you reach and the knowledge you gain will have considerable depth and breadth. Otherwise, when one approaches it purely from an academic level, there are actually many principles within Buddhism that carry profound dimensions of intuitive, felt understanding within them, and these are very difficult to convey through words and language alone. It is very difficult. So much of it is inseparably linked to one's own heart. If I do not engage wholeheartedly, if I do not receive it with my own sincere devotion, then what one receives may not be complete, and what you receive among the outer, inner, and secret levels of meaning may only be the outer or the inner level, while the secret level of meaning remains out of reach, because these secret levels of meaning can only be reached through profound devotion and a deep, earnest thirst for knowledge. Next, we come to the passage, guarding the fortress of the Dharma and upholding the true Dharma. Because when we come to the story sections later on, there may not be as much room for elaboration, though perhaps there will be. In the earlier sections, we have been taking the words of these Mahayana sutras and taking the time to give everyone a brief explanation here and there. The commentaries of past great masters offer various different explanations, but we can explain it in our own way in order to guard the city city of the Dharma, to protect the fortress of the Dharma, protecting the fortress of the Dharma and upholding the true Dharma. Some commentaries also explain it as the fortress of the Dharma refers to ultimate reality, and upholding the true Dharma means resting in ultimate reality. These two can be understood in this way as well. This interpretation comes from the perspective of the profound prajna, the wisdom of emptiness, at the literal level, to protect the Dharma city of our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha and all the Buddhas, the city of the Buddha's Dharma. In order to guard this fortress of the Dharma, what do they uphold? They uphold the true Dharma, which means practicing through study, reflection, and meditation. What we mentioned earlier about upholding the true Dharma includes chanting, recitation, and so on. There are many methods for upholding the true Dharma. If you yourself do not uphold the true Dharma, then you have no way to protect it. So the Bodhisattvas of that time were also guarding the fortress of the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, and they themselves were fully capable of upholding the true Dharma. In other words, if we wish to protect, propagate, or help many people in this world receive the Dharma, then what is essential? We ourselves must understand its profound meaning. If we have not engaged in study, reflection, and meditation ourselves, then the meaning within it will be very difficult to attain. And so in Buddhism, the merit of protecting and upholding the Dharma is immeasurably great. This includes times when we ourselves practice and reflect, which in itself is very meritorious. Yet on the other hand, the merit of protecting the Dharma is even greater. The Dasachakra Ksitigarbha Sutra also teaches this. Though a wise one diligently practices samadhi for billions of kalpas, the sublime prajna thus produced is not equal to the merit of protecting my Dharma. The very deep awareness and merit produced are not equal to the merit that arises, even for a brief moment, from protecting the Dharma of our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. That is the meaning. What this is saying is that in the age of the degenerate Dharma, protecting the true Dharma is very important. There are many ways to protect the true Dharma. Engaging in study, reflection, and meditation yourself is one way of protecting the true Dharma. Then there is establishing a Dharma center. Establishing a Dharma center is also one way of protecting the true Dharma. And if we genuinely feel we do not have the capacity ourselves, there are ways, such as within universities or companies, to establish study groups, Buddhist learning circles, and centers for studying the Dharma. Having these kinds of institutions is also a form of protecting the true Dharma. As for the true Dharma, it has two aspects. One is the Dharma of scripture, and one is the Dharma of realization. Everyone knows this. Propagating the true Dharma through study, reflection, and meditation is also very important in the age of the degenerate Dharma. Please do not think that protecting the true Dharma is perhaps something only for great masters and has nothing to do with us. This kind of thinking is actually not right. Each and every one of us as Buddhist practitioners has a responsibility to propagate the Dharma and benefit beings. Those who have studied Mahayana Buddhism have an even greater responsibility. So even if you only took refuge today, even if you just took refuge and received a Dharma name, do you have this responsibility right now? Yes, you should have this responsibility. Just like someone who has just started a family, who has just formed a household. From that point on, your family places an undeniable responsibility on you. It is an inescapable responsibility. In the same way, let us each not be merely a recipient and consumer, while others are the protectors and propagators. Do not hold that view. Each of us should also aspire to truly learn the authentic essence of the Dharma. Otherwise, you will have no way to propagate or protect it. Even if you have only learned a portion of the teachings, share them with others. And the way of sharing the Dharma with others is not about expanding our numbers. From the depths of our heart, it is so that sentient beings may attain liberation from samsara in the three realms. With this kind of pure and sincere motivation, in whatever era and in whatever country, this kind of attitude is absolutely right. This kind of approach to protecting the Dharma is also truly very important. As the Mahaparinirvana Sutra says, for the sake of protecting the Dharma, the fourfold community of bhikshus, bhikshunis, upasakas, and upasikas may take up knives and swords, guns are not mentioned, but in ancient times blades were mainly used to protect the Dharma. But what is the requirement? The requirement is that one must not harm any sentient beings. You may hold a knife, but you cannot stab anyone to death. It is perhaps just to intimidate. This is a matter of ethical conduct first. What the Mahaparinirvana Sutra says is that when protecting the Dharma, even using weapons to defend it is permitted. In general, the idea of a bhikshu holding a gun seems rather inappropriate. I have seen films where bhikshus are depicted holding guns. After watching that, we feel quite displeased. How could they insult monastics in this way? A monastic should not hold a gun and join in warfare. This is very inappropriate. We have spoken about this in various settings. But in fact, the Mahaparinirvana Sutra does describe something like this for the sake of protecting the Dharma. Of course, what does this illustrate? It is not telling us to pick up weapons and start fighting. The point is that when necessary, we must take the teachings of the Tathagata and protect them with utmost seriousness. Having this kind of attitude is very good. Actually, this attitude is not only found in Buddhism, other religions have it too. When other religions have this kind of attitude, at first I did not understand it, but now I understand it very well. Every religion has its own culture. Some religions will even, for the sake of protecting their own faith, harm others. This does happen. Of course, such actions may be considered quite cruel. From a Buddhist perspective, this is not acceptable. But while we protect our own religion, people all around the world also have their own set of cultures. This is something we should mutually understand. Every religion has its own resilient vitality. If it were to be destroyed by others, that would truly be a great pity. Why am I laughing? When I need to drink some water, the translators have told me that I sometimes speak too quickly, so they ask me to drink water at least 4 times. I have now already drunk 3 times. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche used to speak even faster. Back in 1995, I went to Singapore. Singapore had many simultaneous interpretation setups. I was very impressed at the time, so I purchased some simultaneous interpretation equipment. After returning to the Larungar, I began using it. At that time, His Holiness was teaching the instructions of Mipham Rinpoche and also the teachings of omniscient Longchenpa. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok taught incredibly quickly. I later came to somewhat regret it. Oh no, I cannot keep up at all. I have brought this trouble upon myself because I simply could not keep up. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok's speaking pace was also especially fast. Sometimes he would both recite and explain, and there was no Chinese text available. Without a Chinese text, I had to look at the Tibetan. Sometimes I simply could not keep up at all. Simultaneous interpretation is truly a very difficult thing. But for this particular occasion, our expectations are not so high. As long as we can translate in a general way, it is creating an auspicious condition. I also hope that in the future the true Dharma will reach everyone through various languages and different cultures. When you step outside your usual environment, the feeling is very clear. We must break through our usual comfort zones. I see that many young people in China these days are doing quite well in English, Japanese, Arabic, French, and other languages. They are doing quite well in these areas. I also hope that you will all study a little more of the Buddhist terminology in various languages. That is still very necessary. We can benefit sentient beings in many ways, as long as it benefits sentient beings according to the Mahayana Buddhist principles, especially as Bodhisattva Shantideva's Shiksha Samukaya teaches. What does the Shiksha Samukaya say? As long as it benefits sentient beings, any kind of action is permissible. So through various means, this time we are doing it symbolically, translating into different languages. But the results and everything else are quite good. The Japanese and English-speaking audiences are also very diligent. I am truly impressed and would like to praise all of you this time. With the attitude you listeners are showing, we are all very willing. At the beginning, I thought English would be no problem, but for Japanese, I wondered if there would be very few people. In the end, it turned out fine. I told the translators, even if there is only one person, we should still turn the wheel of Dharma. If there is no one at all, then there is no need to translate. That would be unavoidable. If there is no one at all, then there is no need to translate. But now we have no worries in this regard. In the future, we may need to continue in this area. Everyone should create some auspicious conditions. Let us continue with the teaching. We have just discussed protecting the Dharma. Next, able to give the lion's roar, their names are heard in all 10 directions. Here, able to give the lion's roar of these bodhisattvas overawes and subdues all those beings who hold wrong views, just like the lion, the king of all animals. When it lets out its mighty roar, all the other animals are filled with awe and fear. None of them dares to attack it. In the same way, the wisdom of emptiness realized by these bodhisattvas cannot in fact be countered or refuted by anyone. No one is able to overturn it. This is not Buddhism boasting about itself. When we examine Prajna philosophy and Madhyamaka philosophy, no matter what kind of person is involved, it simply cannot be surpassed. This wisdom of the emptiness of all phenomena can truly be said to be the lion's roar in its fullness. As for the lion's roar realized by all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for us followers, for us who are later learners, I often encourage you all to study a little more Madhyamaka. If you have a good grounding in Madhyamaka, you will have no fear wherever you go. This applies to your spiritual state and all other areas. Otherwise, without a good grounding in Madhyamaka, you dare not ask questions, and you are also afraid of others asking you. When entering Buddhist communities, you feel fearful too. But if you have genuinely realized the emptiness of Madhyamaka in any setting, you will possess a certain inner confidence. Even if you have not fully realized it, you will truly, when it comes to Buddhism, have your own grounded and confident understanding. So in our current curriculum, at least for the study group, the Madhyamaka class is still necessary. If the 5 major treatises are truly out of reach, well, our 5 major treatises program was offered for a period of time last year. But now it has been scaled back and not many people are studying it. Later on, the courses on the 5 major treatises were reduced further, but I hope that our Madhyamaka class will, if I have the opportunity in the future, perhaps continue, because in the past when I taught, the audience was relatively small. At that time, it was nothing particularly special. I taught the root stanzas of the middle way in a very simple way. Also the 400 stanzas on the middle way and the entering the middle way. Any Madhyamaka texts, I did teach them. In the mountain valley of Larungar, I truly taught many of them. For the early Buddhist practitioners among us, I have taught many of these on this side, but perhaps later on, including some audio recordings. I am not sure how complete they are. Before, when we traveled abroad, Khenpo Namdrol from India said that in his early days, he taught a great deal of Madhyamaka at Namdroling Buddhist College. The young students would study his Madhyamaka every day. Khenpo said the young students, meaning the young people of today, he said the young students were studying his recordings. So whether the young people on our side here are studying them, I am not entirely sure, but we still need to take this seriously, including in our study group, because Madhyamaka is the core philosophical view of Buddhism. If you have a thorough grasp of Madhyamaka, many things become very easy to understand. Texts like the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the root stanzas of the middle way, and the 400 stanzas on the middle way, these are especially well suited for connecting with our everyday lives. So here the lion's roar of these bodhisattvas is truly very powerful. Their names are also heard throughout the 10 directions. These bodhisattvas are very well known. Take Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, everyone knows them. All beings in the 3 realms know them. They are well known even in the hell realms. They are also very well known in the heavenly realms. Among the famous people in our human world, it seems like nowadays someone famous in America may not be known in China, and someone famous in China may not be known in America. Someone famous in India, for example, Japan, may not necessarily know them. But truly, these bodhisattvas, their majestic power and their power of aspiration, pervade throughout the worlds of the 10 directions. Similarly, those whose mind stream genuinely possesses the merits of the 3 trainings, their majestic power and their renown will will, in fact, pervade throughout the 10 directions. There may be those who feel jealous, those who themselves lack such qualities, and frequently give rise to feelings of resentment and regret. But there is nothing to be done about it. Truly, if one's inner qualities are very abundant and strong, then one's outer renown will pervade throughout the 10 directions. There is a similar verse in the Sakya Maxims. I have forgotten it. My memory is not so good these days. Getting old. Let me have another cup. Done. That is 4 times now. Without being requested by the multitude, befriending and settling them. Without being requested by the many, these bodhisattvas act as spiritual friends to all beings and settle them in the state of all happiness. For us ordinary worldly people, we are only willing to act after someone has requested us. But for a bodhisattva, as long as it brings happiness and benefit to sentient beings, he performs all of these actions without needing to be asked, without needing anyone to say a word, spontaneously and willingly benefiting beings. This is one expression of a bodhisattva's conduct. Of course, sometimes special auspicious conditions are required. For example, when the Buddha was about to turn the wheel of Dharma, Indra and the others made a request first, and then the Buddha turned the wheel. What was the reason for that? It was actually to create an auspicious interdependence and also to demonstrate the profound depth of the Dharma. That was the purpose. But when it comes to benefiting sentient beings, the Buddha is not like us ordinary beings who only go if someone invites us today, and if no one invites us, we feel awkward about going, or thinking there is no real need and so not going. It would never be that way. Therefore, for everyone here as well, when it comes to benefiting sentient beings, you do not necessarily need someone to urge you. When you feel the conditions are ripe, generate the aspiration wholeheartedly. Some of us think, no one from above told me to, so I will not go. No one from below invited me, so I will not go. There are many hesitations and doubts. But for a true bodhisattva whose mind stream holds bodhicitta in whatever situation, you do not act only when your loved ones ask you. If a complete stranger encounters difficulty, you will wholeheartedly go to help and benefit them. Even when we are on the roadside and see any kind of sentient beings encountering difficulties, we should naturally go to help them. These are expressions of a bodhisattva's conduct. So a bodhisattva is generally described as one who, without being requested, becomes a spiritual teacher to all beings, the sovereign of all beings, and the companion and friend of all beings, upholding and enriching the 3 jewels, ensuring they never come to an end. Here, upholding and enriching means inheriting, propagating, and transmitting. It means inheriting the lineage of the 3 jewels so that the lineage of the 3 jewels never comes to an end. As a Buddhist practitioner, having carefully examined and entered the ranks of Buddhism, you should now carry forward the lineage and activities of the 3 jewels. In the context of Mahayana Buddhism, the activities of the 3 jewels primarily refer to the activity of benefiting sentient beings, and carry this forward continuously from life to life, from generation to generation, without ever allowing it to be interrupted. In truth, what we call the 3 jewels refers to the enlightened ones who bring every sentient being to happiness, this educational philosophy and this community. That is, this method of enabling all sentient beings to attain happiness of body and mind. We must propagate it. We must pass it on. This is our responsibility. So in the process of propagating the teachings of the 3 jewels, when we encounter certain difficulties and obstacles, we cannot allow ourselves to become utterly disheartened or give up from that point on. We cannot do that. Everyone on their journey through life will inevitably encounter various kinds of obstacles and difficulties, but we should face all the difficulties of this world with even greater courage. In fact, the stronger we are, the less power obstacles and adverse conditions have to harm us. If we become more and more fragile and sensitive in the end, many adverse conditions will come flooding in one after another. And so here it speaks of this. Wait, there seems to be the smell of instant noodles. Huh? Where is someone making that? Huh? It seems to be outside the window. That is fine, never mind. Perhaps someone is cooking up a big pot. Are some of our Dharma friends perhaps not attending class today and making instant noodles instead? Many of the people nearby are from our community, so that is probably the case. It seems to have stopped now. Ensuring the continuity of the three jewels for every Buddhist practitioner is both an inherent responsibility and an inherent right. Everyone should be clear about this. You are a Buddhist practitioner, so what should you yourself be doing? The duties and conduct expected of a Buddhist practitioner should be understood. Just as in our world, followers of various different religions will maintain their dignity through their outward conduct and uphold their rules. Next, we come to subduing Mara and all adversaries and bringing all non-Buddhist views under control. These Bodhisattvas have subdued all four Maras. The four Maras, as we often discuss, are the Mara of afflictions, the Mara of the aggregates, the Mara of death, and the Mara of the Deva's son. Once the Bodhisattvas have realized emptiness, the obstacle of the Mara of afflictions is no longer present. The Mara of afflictions, led by attachment, aversion, and delusion, has all been dispelled. Once these afflictions, such as attachment, aversion, and delusion, have dissolved, clinging to the five aggregates, the Mara of the aggregates is also gone. Once the Mara of the aggregates is gone, the fear of death, the Mara of death, is also absent. If even death holds no fear, then harm from Mara Papiyan, the Mara of the Deva's son, is even more impossible. So what is meant by subduing Mara is not an external thing, not that we must crush some demon army. It is not that Buddhist practitioners pick up weapons and start slaying demons. Most of this comes from within, arising from the clinging and grasping of our own minds. These Maras that bring suffering to beings can be subdued, and then there is bringing all non-Buddhist views under control. Here, non-Buddhist views refers to the 96 different non-Buddhist schools of ancient India, those views that do not accord with their tradition, such as the Vaisheshika and Samkhya schools, which basically no longer exist today. In truth, the non-Buddhist views referred to here mainly mean the nihilist view and the eternalist view. The nihilist view holds that everything is merely a momentary flash and nothing more, with no karmic causes and conditions whatsoever, everything simply ceasing and ending. This school of thought is actually a form of wrong view. When we examine it through the lens of dependent origination, it is not the case that sentient beings have no past lives or future lives, so it can be said to be an unreasonable teaching. There is also a school known as the eternalist view. The eternalist view holds that everything is created by a single permanent and unchanging creator, or that everything is permanently fixed and unchanging. But whether examined through Buddhist logic or through contemporary science, this view is in fact untenable. Such a permanent and unchanging thing would bring endless troubles and calamities. So the eternalist and nihilist views are schools that do not accord with our logic and do not accord with the many natural principles of our world. These are what is referred to here as non-Buddhist views. Some people may interpret it very narrowly as anything outside of Buddhism being non-Buddhist. That interpretation is not reasonable. So in this context, there are no so-called other non-Buddhist schools per se. What it means is that in our search for truth, those schools that do not accord with truth or reality, there is no real need for us to rely on or venerate them. That is what this means. Next, all completely purified, having permanently departed from the 5 hindrances and 10 entanglements. Completely and permanently purified of what? Having departed from what? The hindrances and the entanglements. The hindrances refer to the 5 hindrances. These are attachment, aversion, and doubt, the 5 kinds of afflictions we discuss when speaking about meditative concentration. The 5 hindrances, these afflictions. And the entanglements refer to the 10 entanglements. For example, shamelessness, lack of conscience, miserliness, jealousy, and such afflictions. The hindrances are so called because they cover us, making it impossible to continue moving forward and acting. Many afflictions are referred to as hindrances, and as for the entanglements, according to the Abhidharma Kosa and many Abhidharma treatises, they bind sentient beings tightly, making it impossible to attain freedom and liberation. So with regard to these afflictions, these bodhisattvas have permanently departed from the 5 hindrances and 10 entanglements. Of course, we who are practicing should try our best to reduce afflictions. We cannot yet completely depart from all 5 hindrances and 10 entanglements. Sometimes ordinary beings do indeed still have certain faults, but when faults arise, we can work on them gradually. I mean, do not expect that after taking refuge, all afflictions are instantly gone. Some people feel, I still have afflictions, what should I do? They are heartbroken and suffering. That is probably not necessary. Let us proceed step by step. Walk slowly and you may arrive quickly, right? The mind constantly at rest, attaining unobstructed liberation. These bodhisattvas have their minds ever abiding in the Dharma nature, having penetrated the ultimate reality of all phenomena, and they attain liberation without any obstruction whatsoever. The way of the bodhisattva often says, remain like a log, meaning that when meeting any outer circumstance, do not be disturbed by outer conditions. The mind abides fully, remaining completely still and unwavering. We have often spoken of this in the past 2 or 3 sessions. Whatever you encounter, do not disturb the joy of your mind. I use this often. Keep the mind constantly at rest, no matter what happens. But today in the engineering meeting, I was not able to do this. Some of the audience here would know. Sometimes it is just a display on my part. But today it was real. Without a reaction like that, things would genuinely be impossible to carry on. But there are still afflictions arising from one's own nature. That was one of those moments. The mind constantly at rest, attaining unobstructed liberation. This is a kind of inconceivable liberation. What it means is that after departing from these attachments and clinging, the mind remains in this constant state of rest. All obstacles are cut through without hindrance, and liberation is attained. The Tibetan version also speaks of this liberation as the severing of all obstacles. All bodhisattvas are endowed with this quality. For us right now, there are indeed certain difficulties. Keeping the mind at rest, attaining liberation without any obstruction whatsoever, though it is difficult, we still need to make the effort. Making the effort is very important. Mindfulness, samadhi, dharani, and unceasing eloquence. Here, mindfulness refers to right mindfulness. Samadhi is meditative concentration, and dharani is the non-forgetful retentive power, and so on. And then eloquence. All of these are unceasing and uninterrupted. We often reflect. The right mindfulness of one's own 3 doors of body, speech, and mind is always unceasing. The meditative concentration, that is the inseparable union of luminosity and emptiness, is also unceasing. The dharani power of all dharma and meaning is also unceasing, and eloquence too is unceasing. These are all especially distinctive qualities of a bodhisattva. In particular, we often speak of unobstructed eloquence. Unobstructed eloquence is actually described in the Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra and in the commentary on the Avatamsaka Sutra as having 7 kinds of eloquence. Let me briefly share these with everyone here. Among unobstructed eloquence, the first is called swift eloquence. Swift eloquence means that whatever question is asked, a direct answer can be given, answering in the most direct and simplest possible way. The second is called rapid eloquence. This means responding in just a few words, very simply and very quickly. For example, when someone asks a question saying, "Let me rest a bit before I answer," would never happen. A quick and immediate answer is given. The third is called responsive eloquence. Responsive eloquence means that when you give an answer, it is tailored to the mental state of the other person, their cultural background, the time and the place. This is very important. Sometimes we need to be skillful in answering questions. For instance, if an ordinary worldly person asks you a question and we respond using Buddhist terms like ultimate truth and conventional truth, they would have no idea what those terms even mean. If someone from the East asks a question and someone from the West answers, that too can be very difficult. So responsive eloquence differs according to the capacities of people in many different situations. And then there is the fourth, faultless eloquence. This means answers that are perfectly aligned with the truth. It should be reasoning that is compelling and persuasive. It will not contradict the truth in any way. A response without any error whatsoever. The fifth is called uninterrupted eloquence. During the process of answering, there is no break or pause. The logic flows on continuously without stopping. not stopping abruptly after a question is asked. Some of us, when asked a question, go, let me think. None of that. The answer comes directly without any interruption, and there is one called rich and flavorful eloquence, meaning extremely rich in meaning, perhaps drawing on scriptural citations, logical reasoning, and analogies, just like in the Lotus Sutra, which has many meanings, words, scriptural citations, logical reasoning, and analogies, drawing on many aspects to give the answer. That should be the sixth. And then there is the supremely wonderful eloquence of the world. What is this one? The very best kind of expression in this world. This includes the voice, which is like the sound of thunder. The way of answering makes people feel extremely comfortable, not harsh on the ears, and does not wound the hearts of others. It has 5 qualities. The last one has 5 qualities. This is also found in the teachings of past great masters, including in the Mahaprajnaparamita Shastra. These 7 kinds of eloquence are described therein. Then the text here says, generosity, ethical conduct, patience, diligence, meditative concentration, wisdom, and the power of skillful means. The 6 paramitas. I will not elaborate on generosity and ethical conduct. These bodhisattvas are endowed with all of them. Generosity, ethical conduct, patience, diligence, meditative concentration, wisdom, and also skillful means and power. In other translations, there are 10 paramitas. Here, there is the paramita of power, the paramita of wisdom in a secondary sense, and the ultimate paramita of wisdom. The preceding one is the prajna paramita, then the paramita of wisdom, and then the great aspiration paramita. The text here says, none not fully possessed. None not fully possessed means the other 2 should also be included, including the aspiration paramita. All of these are already fully possessed, having attained the non-attainment, abiding in the patience of non-arising. These bodhisattvas have already arrived at the state of non-attainment and non-referencing, the realm of emptiness. And what have they attained? The patience of non-arising of phenomena, the patience of non-arising, the state of the patience of non-arising. Already able to accord and turn the irreversible wheel. They are able to accord with beings and turn the irreversible wheel of Dharma. Accord means according with ultimate reality or according with conditions. There are many explanations. But in essence, it means according with beings and turning the irreversible wheel of Dharma. A bodhisattva, following the capacities and inclinations of beings, turns the wheel of Dharma and will never retrogress. For us, ordinary beings, we may temporarily turn the wheel of Dharma for others and then later fall back. The Dharma wheel stops turning and can no longer turn. There are some teaching assistants of whom I have great hopes. Some Khenpos and Khenmos here, and certain people I thought they could be benefiting beings, with eloquence, wisdom, and so much more to offer. Temporarily, they appeared to have quite good altruistic intention, but then some problems arose. Perhaps it is a matter of their own merit and fortune. In the end, not to mention turning the Dharma wheel, just not turning a wrong Dharma wheel is already quite good. If one turns a twisted Dharma wheel, that is somewhat dangerous, because some people's intelligence and slight familiarity with Buddhism mean that if they turn a wrong Dharma wheel, the effect can be even greater. This does happen. A bodhisattva, however, will never retrogress. For us ordinary beings, perhaps some Dharma masters turn the wheel of Dharma, and in the end they are exhausted. Oh dear, time to rest now. Time for a break. No more turning needed. That is enough. But to truly turn the wheel of Dharma, I hope all of you will do so. Turning the wheel of Dharma is very important. I also request all of you to turn the wheel of Dharma. Let me share just a little more. It seems like rather a lot today. Skillfully understanding the characteristics of phenomena and knowing the capacities of beings. Being able to understand the characteristics of all phenomena, just like the various kinds of Dharma characteristics described in the Abhidharmakosa, and the Lotus Sutra also describes the characteristics of the different vehicles, such as the ox cart, deer cart, and goat cart. And then also knowing the capacities of beings. Knowing the capacities of all beings is very important. If we do not know the capacities of beings, even in doing tasks or in handling simple situations, like when 2 people have a conflict, if you are trying to mediate their dispute, knowing their capacities is essential. When teaching Tantra, teaching Sutra, explaining worldly matters, or even handling matters unrelated to any belief, the capacities qualities of each being are truly vastly different, sometimes interacting with many different kinds of people is very meaningful. Knowing the capacities of beings, encompassing the great multitude, attaining fearlessness. Not being turned by beings, but encompassing and protecting them. That is to say, encompassing these beings with fearlessness, using your wisdom to encompass these beings without any fear. It is not that we simply follow these beings and in the end we get pulled away by them. As a bodhisattva, with the wisdom of no self, beings can be completely guided and tamed. And in guiding and taming beings, there is no fear whatsoever. In some commentaries, the aspect of fearlessness is also explained from 4 angles. No fear regarding hearing and dharani, their retentive power, and no fear regarding knowing capacities. In knowing the capacities of beings, there is no fear, and no fear regarding giving answers, responding to beings in all kinds of ways, and resolving doubts, dispelling all questions without fear. The Buddha has 4 kinds of fearlessness, and bodhisattvas also have 4 kinds of fearlessness. If one's learning is quite good, there is certainly no fear. I saw that yesterday after class. All the teaching assistants, I was still very happy. Each one is so young. Everyone seemed to be teaching without any fear. I hope you will all continue in this way. I see each one younger than the last, each one's wisdom sharper than the last, without any other pressures. This kind of study, reflection, and practice is really excellent. I have had such experiences myself, without any other worries or concerns, just studying, reflecting, and practicing wholeheartedly. At such times, any doubts or wrong views within Buddhism can be expressed openly in front of everyone. In this way, many doubts are resolved. In the future, in the area of propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings, this will definitely have great benefit. So we should let us stop here for today. That is good. All right. Let me pick up my prayer wheel. I would like to show everyone now. Otherwise, no one will be able to see my prayer wheel. Except for those inside here, none of them are using prayer wheels. Those listening today and those reciting the dedication prayers, everyone can hold a prayer wheel, and then let us together recite the King of Aspiration prayers. We were just discussing encompassing the great multitude, attaining fearlessness. We should be holding large prayer wheels without the slightest trace of fear. This fearlessness does not mean we are holding weapons to fight someone. That is not what it means. It means the mind has already attained freedom and wisdom. Some of us today feel a lack of security, very fearful in daily life, very fearful at home, fearful in relationships, fearful in running a business, fearful when interacting with others, fearful when dealing with one's parents, fearful when making investments, even fearful when walking, when the road is dark at night, afraid to go back, afraid again. But if you have the wisdom of no self, there is no fear whatsoever, encompassing all beings without any fear, encompassing all beings, attaining fearlessness.
Bandara